Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion and Fire Potential Briefing for Wednesday, June 5th. This is Gina Palma. Over the last 30 days, the image on the left shows the percent of normal precipitation across the Great Basin and the west. And you can see we've had well above normal precipitation really in all areas of the Great Basin over the last 30 days, with the exception of parts of western Nevada, which have been a little bit drier in the lower elevations, and also over parts of central Idaho into western Wyoming. Over the last 60 days, a similar trend with, again, well above normal precipitation in most areas, with the exception of some of those drier spots of western Nevada and up in the north. Looking at the recent lightning and precipitation over the last 24 hours, you can see the scattered amounts of lightning across Nevada, Utah, and up into eastern Idaho and Wyoming yesterday. And we also had some precipitation. Again, most of that precipitation was on the lighter side, similar to the last few days, but we did have some heavier amounts above 1/4 of an inch, especially over northern Utah into eastern Idaho and Wyoming. No real new snowfall across the higher terrain of the Great Basin with the exception of parts of the Uintas, and we still have well above normal snowpack across the area. New fire activity is shown here on the map for the Great Basin. Again, the pink circles are the prescribed fires across Utah up into Idaho, and the small red circles are any new fires over the last 24 hours. Current fuel conditions with the moisture in place, obviously our ERCs are well below normal for the time of year and below the 50th percentile in all areas. These charts show how far below normal our fuel conditions are across the Great Basin, and again, it's area-wide. The satellite loop from this morning shows the trough of low pressure that's been affecting the Great Basin over the last several days has now moved over the Four Corners area and will continue moving eastward. Still plenty of moisture in place over the eastern half of the Great Basin and in the higher terrain of the central Sierra into parts of central Nevada. We'll see thunderstorm activity again today, but again decreasing coverage from what we've seen over the last couple of days. Otherwise, warm temperatures will exist across the Great Basin. Today will likely be our highest temperatures of the week, with highs 10 degrees or more above normal. You can see the next system moving into the Pacific Northwest, and this will allow for much cooler temperatures later this week, along for an increase in winds starting today in the far western areas of the Great Basin, and then spreading across the Great Basin over the next 2 days. We'll also have an increase in showers and thunderstorms. Looking at the weather pattern for later this afternoon, again with that area of low pressure moving eastward, the deepest moisture moves into the Rockies, but we'll still have enough moisture over the eastern portion of the Great Basin and parts of Nevada for isolated to scattered thunderstorms, producing light amounts of precipitation. The next system moving to the northwest, again, will allow winds to increase over parts of western Nevada and western Idaho today. And this will allow for improved dispersion in those areas, but still poor dispersion over the rest of the Great Basin under the lighter wind flow. You can see the transport winds, the image on the left for later today, how those winds start to increase over parts of far western Nevada into parts of central Idaho. Winds will likely remain below 30 miles per hour today, but will again be increased from what we've seen over the last couple of days. Mixing heights will remain moderate to high across the Great Basin. On Thursday, that system moves into Washington, and we will see winds increase across most of the Great Basin with the exception of parts of far southeast Utah and the Arizona Strip. So southwest winds will gust above 30 or 35 miles per hour, and we will see an increase in cloud cover, along with some showers and thunderstorms, especially across Idaho and parts of northwest Utah into eastern Nevada, and much cooler temperatures starting Thursday and then spreading further east later this week. Dispersion, again, will increase across the region with these gustier winds. You can see the transport winds, the image on the left, how these winds really start to increase across northern and western areas on Thursday. And mixing heights will remain generally high region-wide with the exception of parts of eastern Nevada into northern Utah. By Friday, this area of low pressure starts to move into northern Idaho, so we will see those gusty winds push further east across the Great Basin, along with the showers and thunderstorms make its way across the area as well, with much cooler temperatures. By Friday, our temperatures will drop up to 20 degrees in some areas, with highs only reaching the 60s and 70s over northern areas of the Great Basin and into the 80s down south. Still good dispersion with these gustier winds expected on Friday. You can see the transport winds, how they shift across the Great Basin. The strongest winds on Friday will be across eastern Idaho into northern Nevada, but still a significant increase in winds in all areas of the Great Basin, with again moderate to high mixing heights. Looking at the forecast clearing index for Utah, today clearing indices will be in the moderate range over the northern half of the state and much higher over southern areas, but you can see how that will increase as we go through Thursday and Friday and those gustier winds spread eastward into Utah. Forecast amounts of precipitation through Saturday morning are shown here. You can see the heaviest amounts are up over the northern half of the Great Basin as that area of low pressure moves through, especially in the higher terrain of Idaho into western Wyoming. Further south, we'll see more scattered amounts of precipitation associated with thunderstorm activity. Parts of far southern Nevada into the Arizona Strip and southeast Utah will likely remain on the drier side. As we go into this weekend, that area of low pressure moves across the northern Rockies, again pushing most of the precipitation up across Idaho, Wyoming, and into the northern tier of the country. We will see drier and warmer conditions start to push across Nevada and Utah. We will still have good dispersion as there'll still be breezy winds, and gusty winds will shift with north to northeast winds over the southern half of the Great Basin by the early part of the weekend. As we move through Sunday, this area of low pressure now is well to the east, and we will see lighter winds and an increase in temperatures along with drier conditions across the Great Basin, but that also means a little bit more on the poor dispersion side, especially across the northern half of the region. Similar conditions on Monday and on Tuesday with lighter winds, warm temperatures, and generally dry conditions. We will have a return of showers and thunderstorms, however, again by the mid to late portion of next week. Precipitation accumulation, which takes us from Saturday through Monday, again that period is mostly on the dry side, so any lingering precipitation will be in the far north, otherwise dry conditions across the basin. We will have low fire potential across the Great Basin through early next week, again as we've continued to see moisture in place. You can see some areas of California drying out, and that wind signature as we get towards later this week in the early part of the weekend in California. Again, we will see those gustier winds across the Great Basin, but with fuel conditions being well below normal, no major concerns for the Great Basin. We could see, if we do see any lightning starts in some of those drier areas, possibly in some of the grass areas in the low elevations, there is a possible for some brief fire spread. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, taking us into the third week in June, still looking at above normal temperatures for the far west side of the Great Basin, but again that above normal precipitation signature remains across the Great Basin and across much of the country further east. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.